Hey everybody, I'm going to try to be quick about this. Today is the 26th anniversary of Timothy McVeigh's bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. In 1995, April 19th, when it happened, I was in Columbia, Missouri. I was finishing up. Well, I never actually finished the degree, but I was near the end of my time, pursuing a master's degree in philosophy at the University of Missouri at Columbia. I don't really clearly remember what I was doing that day. I don't have any like 9/11 or Space Shuttle Challenger crystal clear moment of where I was and what I was doing when I learned about it. So this morning, I only know this because this morning when I asked for my flash briefing from the Amazon Echo device, it gives me BBC headline news, NPR headline news, and headline news from Al Jazeera. And in the NPR headline news, they stated that this is the 26th anniversary of that event, and then it was a very short segment, just flatly stated, just asserted, Timothy McVeigh bombed the building because of hatred of government and white supremacy. Now that's phrased in an ambiguous way. You could interpret that as he hated the government and he hated white supremacy, but I don't think that's the claim they were making. I think the claim they were making was he hated the government and he was a white supremacist. Well, this is race baiting. One, as far as I can tell, it's not true, and two, it's race baiting. What is race baiting? Well, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, race baiting is the act of intentionally encouraging racism or anger about issues relating to race, often to get political advantage. For example, they resorted to scaremongering and race baiting about alleged ballot rigging. So, yeah, NPR is they're simply asserting that Timothy McVeigh bombed the federal building because he was a white supremacist. Where's the proof of that? Timothy McVeigh, he wrote it out on, yellow legal paper by hand, a very short but very clear manifesto about why he did what he did. It'll just take a minute to read the whole thing. Here we go. Timothy McVeigh writes, I explain herein why I bombed the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. I explain this not for publicity, not seeking to win an argument of right or wrong. I explain so that the record is clear as to my thinking and motivations in bombing a government installation. I chose to bomb the federal building because such an action served more purposes than other options. Foremost, the bombing was a retaliatory strike, a counterattack for the cumulative raids and subsequent violence and damage that federal agents had participated in over the preceding years, including, but not limited to, Waco. From the formation of such units as the FBI's hostage rescue and other assault teams amongst federal agencies during the 1980s, culminating in the Waco incident, federal actions grew increasingly militaristic and violent, to the point where at Waco our government, like the Chinese, was deploying tanks against its own citizens. Knowledge of these multiple and ever more aggressive raids across the country constituted an identifiable pattern of conduct within and by the federal government and amongst its various agencies. See enclosed. For all intents and purposes, federal agents had become soldiers, using military training, tactics, techniques, equipment, language, dress, organization, and mindset, and they were escalating their behavior. Therefore, this bombing was also meant as a preemptive or proactive strike against these forces and their command and control centers within the federal building. When an aggressor force continually launches attacks from a particular base of operation, it is sound military strategy to take the fight to the enemy. Additionally, borrowing a page from U.S. foreign policy, I decided to send a message to a government that was becoming increasingly hostile by bombing a government building and the government employees within that building who represent that government. Bombing the Murrah Federal Building was morally and strategically equivalent to the U.S. hitting a government building in Serbia, Iraq, or other nations. See enclosed. Based on observations of the policies of my own government, I viewed this action as an acceptable option. From this perspective, what occurred in Oklahoma City was no different than what Americans rain on the heads of others all the time, and subsequently, my mindset was and is one of clinical detachment. The bombing of the Murrah building was not personal, no more than when Air Force, Army, Navy, or Marine personnel bomb or launch cruise missiles against government installations and their personnel. I hope this clarification amply addresses your question. Sincerely, Timothy J. McVeigh. Where's the white supremacy? It's very clear what motivated him. He says he's detached. I think he was angry. I think he was possibly justifiably angry at the overreach and the militarization of domestic police forces and the use of military techniques against the domestic population. I think that, from what he said, it would be much more accurate and honest to say that he was motivated by anti-imperialism than white supremacy. But is there any basis for saying that Timothy McVeigh bombed the federal building because he held white supremacist views? Well, I put that question to the internet and I found a Quora, I think that's how it's pronounced, a Quora article, which has 13 answers, and the top most rated answer is one by Joseph Jacob Cohn. And basically, there's nothing in official statements. There's nothing in any statements from the government saying that McVeigh did this, out of a white supremacist motivation. But if you dig into the conspiracy theories around it, the mysterious John Doe number 2. Now, let me refresh your memory because, I hadn't thought about this in years until just today, and it was the NPR story that prompted me to dig back into it. Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols are the two people who collaborated in the bombing and who were subsequently convicted for it. Federal law enforcement officials insist that they were the only two involved. There was nobody else, and that the feds caught everybody, which is to say both of those guys. Now, I'm not saying it's crazy, that it's paranoid or beyond the pale to say that other people might have been involved. It seems likely that other people might have been involved. But according to official sources, the sorts of sources who spin the narrative that NPR and organizations like it have to take seriously, there was just two people, Terry Nichols and Timothy McVeigh. But if you delve into the conspiracy theories around it, we get to things like this. The mysterious John Doe number 2, who several witnesses insisted they saw McVeigh with while renting the truck, possibly in the truck with him as they rode to the building, and or in the days immediately before the attack, has often been tentatively identified by Oklahoma City conspiracy theorists as having been a man by the name of Michael W. Bresica, who is also a member of the ARA, or the Aryan Resistance Army, and is today a convicted bank robber. Okay, so there's a connection to white supremacy. But there's nothing there to indicate that Timothy McVeigh was motivated by white supremacy when he bombed that building. That white supremacy played any role whatsoever in his selection of target or his choice of actions. But, the connections, you can say there is something here. You can say there is some speculative, tentative connection between Timothy McVeigh and white supremacy, but that doesn't equal the flat statement that NPR made, just the point-blank statement. He bombed the building because he hated the government and because he's a white supremacist. Why would NPR say otherwise? Why would NPR try to insert white supremacy into this 26-year-old event and news story? Because they're race baiting. That is the order of the day. And here's the really Orwellian creepy thing about it. These news briefings that I get via the Amazon Echo, they're not archived anywhere that I can access. So I went to the NPR website. That website used to be searchable. It's no longer searchable. Now it is just strictly curated. There's a front page. Here you go. These are the things that you can access on this website. Well, there's nothing there about Oklahoma City. There's nothing on the front page of the NPR website about Oklahoma City. So, the archive for today's All Things Considered, All Things Considered is still running right now on the airwaves. So it's not archived on their website yet. So I just looked through the list of stories that they covered on their morning flagship news program, All Things Considered. There is no mention of the Oklahoma City bombing in any of those stories. If it's mentioned anywhere, it's just in the headline news. So NPR used to be a valuable source of information, and they used to format their website so as to make it easy for you to find the information you're looking for. Now they are strictly a propaganda arm of the government and the corporate state. And fuck them. And I'm a lifelong listener and lover of NPR. I've written many a check and sent it off to NPR member stations in the various cities where I've lived over the course of my life, often when I couldn't afford to do so, and now I despise NPR. All right, that is all. Talk to you later.